Yo, what's good, everybody? It is ya boy, Golden Falls, Golden What Ifs, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back. This is part 2 of What If Deku Had a Spirit Quirk, and I hope you guys enjoy. As always, I want to say something because I always forget to do this, and I'm gonna try to practice, and I'm gonna try to do this more often. And my buddy, who basically moderates my Discord server, tells me to do it, and he always he gets so mad at me when I don't do this. So please, in the link in the description, there's a bunch of links down there. I have a Spotify, I have stuff like that. Check out the Discord if you want to hop in. It's a really dead Discord. I'm not gonna lie. I barely even talk in it. But if I start getting a bunch of people talking in it, and maybe there's people like, hey, asking me questions or something like that, I might pop in from time to time. But yeah, I mean, it's a Discord where you can talk to people who watch my videos. Basically anybody who's ever watched anything that I've ever done. So if you want to join it, feel free to join it. If you don't want to join it, don't join it. I got to start making it a habit of saying this beforehand in these videos. But with that said, I don't want to waste much more of your time. I don't want to waste no more of your time. Because let's get right into the what if. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya and Class 1A are about to go on to their next training session, and that is in the USJ. But the USJ facility isn't going to be your normal training facility because, well, there's going to be villains invading the USJ. Izuku and his class would enter the USJ being introduced to 13, or Pro Hero 13. And Pro Hero 13 would explain what the USJ is all about, the rescue facility, how they have different scenarios, different areas, different environments, and so on and so forth. But eventually this would lead to portals opening up nearby and portals shelling out villain after villain. Villains would begin to invade, and Izuku would be in a standstill, shocked, seeing these villains pour out. But eventually, when every single villain is out of those portals, he would see two that really catches his eye. One who's misty and seemingly the cause of the portals, but the other dormant, a giant figure, a giant being, but the being stands there in complete, just brain dead. It's as if this creature is complete and utterly brain dead. And he's confused by this because they both give off some sort of spiritual aura. But at the same time, he can't put his finger on it. Maybe if he just gets closer, but he's not so sure. And he can't really just walk up to them. They are villains, and they are probably going to attack him. So he needs to make sure. He needs to make sure that he's gonna be okay in the first instance. And Aizawa would tell Pro Hero 13 to protect the kids as he would go off. Izuku, on the other hand, would be told to go get help ASAP, in which Izuku would nod his head and think, you know what, this is a great time for him to basically use his powers, fly off, and go get help from heroes. But there's something he's been working on. He conjures up a spirit that everybody can see, and he tells the spirit to go get help from the heroes, writing down a quick note and giving it to it just in case the spirit can't get its full message across. Now, the spirit would take off flying as well, even as fast as Izuku would be flying, and Pro Hero 13 thinks that this is a great idea. I mean, now Izuku's still here, at least under their protection to a certain extent, right? Like, so they can somehow keep an eye on him. But they really can't keep an eye on him because he would immediately go ghost mode and fly off toward the two beings that he's been thinking about. He stands in front of the Nomu and Kurogiri without them even realizing it. But Izuku can feel deep down inside the Nomu that there's a spirit trapped there trying to be released. A spirit that has basically been taken over and no longer wants to do the things they're doing. Kurogiri, on the other hand, seems to be even deeper within this abyss, as if he can't reach Kurogiri just yet, but the Nomu, being that he is kind of dull in the mind, can be reached almost instantaneously. Izuku would change the entirety of the area, which wouldn't actually change the outward appearance to anyone else, but him and the Nomu would be alone in this space and time. Izuku would look toward the Nomu to see the person who once was there, and he connects with the spirit, telling the spirit that it's okay, that it was none of this was his fault, and he's going to help him and get him out of there, and or at least help him and restore him to what he once was, at least as a spirit. In which he immediately is happy to hear this, and of course thanks Izuku, asking how is a kid able to do something like this, in which Izuku says that he was, well, gifted something, powers of some sorts that allows him to connect with spirits, and he doesn't understand how it works 100%, but he knows that he can help him, and he knows that they can stop all this from happening. In which the spirit would then reach out toward Izuku. Izuku would grab the man's hand and yank him seamlessly out of the Nomu. The Nomu, well, once coming back to the real world, the Nomu would just collapse, fall apart, and almost just lay there like completely and utterly lifeless, as if there was no commands to be made, and that the complete control it had over the Nomu is no longer there. On the other hand, the spirit that is basically free now is then reshaping itself into basically what the Nomu was, or a more kind of humanoid or kind of spiritual version of a Nomu. And now it becomes a helper or a spirit that is tamed by Izuku, seemingly flipping the sides of the battle, and this Nomu that is a spirit now begins to clash with these other villains, smacking and dashing and knocking out a ton of them, as Izuku reminds him not to kill, that heroes do not kill, even in the act of revenge. And the spirit listens to Izuku as if it's obeying its quote-unquote master. But Izuku is not like a controller necessarily, but the spirits have this kind of connection with Izuku and are okay with helping him as if there's some sort of family, you could say. Izuku would watch as the Nomu would knock out a ton of the villains there, and even begin to beat on Shigaraki. Shigaraki would try his best to stop this kind of creature, but he can't do a single thing. He seemingly can't grab onto it, can't latch onto it, at least not fully. Yes, there is some sort of figment that he can touch, but it's different. It's as if this Nomu can be kind of hit by outward blasts. Maybe we're talking fire, ice, and stuff like that if you shot it at it. But in terms of physical touch, it's not going to work. And Shigaraki would then fall basically victim to being knocked out by this spiritual Nomu. And then Kurogiri, on the other hand, would be more or less subdued by Izuku and Bakugo for the moment. They would subdue him entirely, and this spirit Nomu would make sure that Shigaraki cannot go anywhere. The heroes would even arrive and subdue the rest of the villains that are there, but it seems like everybody is safe and everybody has already secured all the villains that invaded the USJ. And it seems as if Izuku is able to make some sort of connection with Kurogiri that basically subdues him, at least for the time being, in which the USJ would more or less collapse, or the invasion of the USJ would more or less collapse, stopping Shigaraki and also the League of Villains from actually getting what they wanted, and that was their hands and, well, killing All Might. But it seems like they didn't realize and didn't come to the conclusion that they'd be dealing with something major like Izuku Midoriya. Something massive, and something that they really weren't expecting is the powers that Izuku holds. But with the capture of Shigaraki and Kurogiri, there are question marks to be made, and question marks that, well, let's just say, Izuku will definitely bring up. Because after all this USJ incident is over, he would begin speaking to Aizawa about Kurogiri, about how Kurogiri has a spirit within him, that there is something that is half spirit but also somewhat still alive. He knows it sounds crazy, but he's not fully within the next life just yet. Kurogiri is just like that Nomu, just like that creature, and of course Aizawa is shocked to hear this and wonders who this is, in which Izuku says that that he can work with Kurogiri, and they can slowly but surely kind of find out the person behind this shrouded mask, in which Aizawa says that would 100% leak into the time of him being at the UA Sports Festival. And that's how he's going to get recognized, that he has to be through that, and he has to do that as well. In which Izuku looks at him and tells him that he never has cared anymore, at least for a long time, that about this little, popularity contest. That a long time ago, he was bullied, and more bullied, to the point where he fell off a building, but a building he was considering jumping from. He no longer cares about this popularity contest. He no longer cares about being this #1 hero that shines among them all, because if he's going to be that, he will be that. But it doesn't mean he has to be that through popularity contests and so on. He tells him that he'll make the decision, and his decision is to find out more about what this person is, because this is more important than any other sports festival he could think of. Let the others enjoy it, let the other people relish in it, and then they'll find out what happens next. Aizawa is shocked to hear such maturity from this kid, but then he thinks that it makes sense. The kid has gone through a lot, has lost a lot, and frankly, he's dealing with a lot. So the maturity, it must fit right in almost instantaneously, in which they'll figure out the whole internship for him later, and it shouldn't be an issue with the type of powers that he's been portraying. Now, this would lead them to days of working with Kurogiri. Kurogiri was and is a very, very, very hard key lock to crack, because at the end of the day, the guy is massively loyal to Shigaraki, and seemingly the lack of kind of spirit there is really hurting this investigation. But eventually Izuku is able to make legway, and eventually he's able to show a face. Izuku, through kind of like this weird astral projection, is able to show the face of someone they once knew by the name of Oboro, in which this would absolutely shock Aizawa. And eventually they would bring in President Mike, who would be just as taken back by this as well, thinking that this is outlandish, that he was dead. He died. They're confused, but Izuku says that based on the connection he can feel, it seems like All For One, Shigaraki, maybe some other guy, something or someone picked him up and turned him into what he is now. And it took a lot of time, a lot of mental fortitude, a lot of mental destruction. They broke him down and rebuilt him once again, in which they ask Izuku, can he be released? Can they let him go? Can they get him out of there? In which Izuku would say, yeah, he can, but he won't be the Oboro that they once knew. He won't even be human. He'll just be a spirit. He'll be gone, and he can make his choice if he would like to leave or not. He can make his choice if he would like to stay, and he can make his choice if he would like to transcend to whatever realm he chooses to transcend to, and they may never see him ever again. In which Aizawa tells Izuku to do it, because the guy deserves to have his choice, and the guy deserves to have his own way out. In which Izuku nods his head as he releases Oboro from his restraints, creating a spirit that would hover right next to Izuku. As this spirit would hover, Izuku would look at it and nod his head, saying that he can do as he wishes now. He can stick around, help him, and be a part of his spirits and live amongst the spirit world that was created when Izuku, for the most part, kind of passed on into that world and then came right back out, which he can live there for now and await helping Izuku as he wishes, or he can go on his own kind of journey, his own spiritual journey, and see where this other world takes him. Oboro would nod his head and would disappear within Izuku, and it seems as if he decided to stick around and help the kid out, and Izuku could tell that Oboro wants to make atone for what he's done so far, but also help a kid like Izuku, someone who is passionate, who is willing to basically put hero work and also the people first, become a greater hero than everyone has ever seen. In which Izuku even tells Aizawa that Oboro will stick around and that if he wants to see him, he definitely can, but it just won't be the version he once knew. And he apologizes for that, but that's just what it is. In which Aizawa would nod and say he understands. And he tells the kid that he did a great job, but he also tells him that they need to find him an internship, so they'll be looking. In which they begin looking for Izuku to gain some sort of internship. And frankly, it's pretty difficult. A lot of people are taking the vouch of Izuku being like a very talented kid who has a lot of development and stuff like that, but it seems as if a lot of people don't really want to take on the question mark that Izuku could possibly be. And that's an understanding, or we all understand that, but Aizawa wants still to make this push for Izuku to get what he frankly deserves. And what Izuku deserves is the best agency he possibly could get into, and through a lot of strings and a lot of just working and so on, he would get a couple people reaching out to actually help Izuku Midoriya. And let's just say the one person that really reached out that would catch everyone's eye heavily would be the one and only Sir Nighteye. In which Sir Nighteye would say that he's heard about this interesting kid at UA and he doesn't mind taking him on for an internship. He's no sidekick, he's no anything like that. He can learn from one of the big three and he can, get some experience and so on. So that's what Izuku does. He goes on to gain that experience. He works with Mirio, he works with people like Sir Nighteye, and they continue to kind of learn from each other. Izuku kind of spars and trains a little bit with Mirio, learning a little bit different version of his hand-to-hand combat, being that Mirio and Izuku have a similar way of fighting because of Mirio's permeation and Izuku's kind of ghost or spiritual-like form. It allows them both to relate to each other in some way. And on top of that, Sir Nighteye is very instructive. Sir Nighteye knows what his weaknesses are, tells him how to fix them, and they really approach Izuku's kind of hero or future hero prospects as constructive as possible. And they benefit from this massively. Sir Nighteye grows quite fond of Izuku as well, believing that the kid has such great potential, and from what he's heard, he has even greater potential than they could possibly imagine. This quirk that he has, it's no ordinary quirk. It is no quirk that is going to make you stronger, make you faster, make you whatever. No, it's nothing like that. This is different. Izuku might just be a completely different person. He might just be some sort of a spectral savior as a hero. Now, with that said though, Izuku would continue his training and would continue working with Sir Nighteye, but eventually that phone would ring and that phone call would come in, and Izuku would hear about Tenya Ida being extremely wounded by the hero killer. Izuku, unable to even be there because of a different scenario, he would then hear that Tenya Ida would be hospitalized by the hero killer, but luckily enough, there was people on the scene like Endeavor that were able to stop the hero killer from escaping, at least for the time being. Now, this would lead them back to UA, would lead them back to their classroom. Aizawa would sit them all down and tell them that this is the casualty of being a hero. That if they don't want this, they're scared of this, and they are terrified of this, they should leave now. That the hero work is not fit for them, and that they are not ready for it if they can't handle things like this. That they should leave now. And that it's that simple. In which everybody stands there wondering, is anybody going to leave? Is anybody going to move? Is anybody going to basically take off? No. They all sit there, they all think they're ready, and they all have their heads held high to lead on as far as they possibly can for their fellow student Tanya Ida. So they would then go on to work for their written portion of their final exams and also the potential practical of the final exams. Now, these final exams, are very important. So they all study together, they all work hard together, and they all kind of work together, right? Studying and trying to get ready and preparing. But even right before their written portion of the exam, it seems like another wave of emotions will come through, because it seems like Tanya Ida did not make it, and Tanya Ida would pass on to the next life. But Izuku, well, he could feel his spirit. He could feel Tanya Ida hovering around the area. Izuku would tell him to relax and enjoy what is the afterlife. But Tanya's spirit would approach him and then would disappear, well, basically entering the spectral area or spectral world that is Izuku's Quirk has created, the in-between both life and death, same as Izuku. And it seems like Tanya is still destined to be a hero, just alongside Izuku Midoriya as a spirit. Now, as they await the written portion of the exam, they all get ready and they all feel prepared. They all do their best on the written portion, but the practical is what scares them most. What is to come for the practical exam? Izuku awaits, and eventually, when they arrive at the gym, they hear what it's all about. They hear that it will be heroes, or the students, versus the heroes or the teachers. Now, that is something that was not expected by the students. The teachers are absolutely experienced and frankly slightly terrifying. But still, Izuku is told that he's paired up with Bakugo, who at this point, they're pretty well off in terms of a friendship. They're not like anything bad, and Bakugo still feels bad for what he did, but at the same time, it's not like he's not like hating Izuku or anything by any means. They're going to work together for the most part, and that will be perfect because they have to take on someone like All Might, which this is something that is insane and a task that Izuku feels they don't stand a chance in. But Bakugo says that he wants to take on All Might, that he wants to give it his all. And if he doesn't want to give it his all and he wants to escape through those gates, then that's fine. But he wants to test his limits, and Izuku would cut him off and say that if he wants to test his limits and he wants to see where they are in terms of power, in terms of strength, in terms of how good they are with their quirks, then he's all for it. That they will go head to head with the number one hero and they will win. Izuku would stand next to Bakugo as they await, getting ready for the gates to swing open. And as they would open, as the cityscape would be in front of them, and at the end of that cityscape, All Might would stand, they would charge forward. Izuku would charge forward next to Bakugo, and they would begin to fight All Might. Izuku sending spirit after spirit, and would begin to fly alongside Bakugo in his own spirit form, and he would basically hit All Might as much as possible and try to slow him down or weaken him. Now, it's not easy, but as Izuku begins to kind of fall short in terms of raw power, it seems like a spirit comes out to help him. That spirit was the Nomu. The Nomu that was really supposed to just leave and go on to the next afterlife, and Izuku was thinking the same thing, was to allow him to leave. He's been punished enough, but it seems like the spirit behind it continues to want to help Izuku. So it stays. And Izuku's Nomu, basically spiritual or astral Nomu, would begin clashing with All Might. And they all three would go head to head with All Might. And as they do so, everybody is watching, thinking that this is a spectacle, that this is insane. The what is this? Seriously. In which, as they're clashing and as they're fighting, another spirit would then show its face. And that spirit, well, would be Tenya Ida. A fast Tenya Ida would dash around, kicking and punching All Might over and over and over again, just a blur dashing across the area, in which everybody stands there in shock, thinking that maybe this was the full potential of Tenya awakened by the afterlife. Maybe he now it has the speed, has the grit, has everything, has the potential that he always wanted. And as they continue this onslaught on All Might, Izuku realizes that they can actually win. Izuku continues this, and as the Nomu would restrict All Might, they would get the cuffs and immediately place them on All Might's hands, and immediately the alarms would sound, and someone would come over the PA and say that this test is over, and that the students, Katsuki Bakugo and Izuku Midoriya, have passed. Everybody in shock, but everybody is screaming. Everybody is excited. I mean, at the end of the day, they just defeated the #1 hero, and everybody is in complete and utter shock. But of course, they did beat him under interesting circumstances, like they handcuffed him. He wasn't technically out cold or anything, but still, they defeated him. And everybody is completely over the moon about it. And frankly, even All Might is over the moon about it. Even All Might is happy that this happened, and it shows the potential that both Izuku and Bakugo have, not only individually, but as a team. And everybody is excited that they basically will eventually learn that they all can go on the forest training camp together, and they'll all begin training and getting stronger, getting better in this forest training camp. They all head off on their buses to the forest training camp, and when they arrive, they meet the wild pussycats, who throw them off a cliff like it's nothing. Now, Izuku could just fly away and easily get past, but he does decide to help out as much as possible, using spirits, using anything he possibly can to destroy these monstrous earth-like creatures, something like that, in which they're able to get through relatively simply, and they meet on the other side in the training camp. Now, in this version of the reality, or this version of the what if, Izuku's class would go through this entire training camp very simply. No villain invasion, no crazy villains invading, no nothing like that. Izuku's whole class would get the full training camp to train, to get stronger, to get better, and they continue to learn more and more about their own quirks and other people's quirks as well. Benefiting heavily from this, someone like Izuku does as well. Izuku would find even more strengths of his quirk, more things that he can really do with his quirk, even practicing a possession trick that allowed him to basically take control of one of the wild pussycats. Now, just temporarily, and then he just hopped back down to their body. But that was kind of like the training sessions that he went through, and kind of the stuff that he did to benefit from it. And it was just, at the end of the day, a massive accomplishment. Something that he will look at as something that he can continue pushing himself on, and more stuff he learns, the better hero he's going to eventually be. And that's the reality of it. The more he trains, the more things he does, and the more he's able to kind of get his kind of way around his quirk, learning more and more things, he's only going to get better. Now, as the forest training camp would come to a close, and as all of them would be done training, they would head on their buses and head back to UA. But what they didn't know was that something else was coming. Something else was about to happen that, well, frankly, they weren't that prepared for. Because their bus would eventually get flipped by a Nomu crashing into their bus and slamming them on their side. Izuku would slowly but surely climb out as he sees the Nomu there, about to actually attack them. But quickly he's able to take control, release the spirit, and the Nomu would collapse. And Izuku would allow that Nomu to just leave if it so chooses, but of course that decision is always going to be up to the spirit. As Izuku would help his classmates out using spirits to actually open ways out of the bus as well, now it's time, well, for them to figure out what the hell is going on, because it seems like Nomus have run rampant, and All For One is looking to end All Might and the One For All legacy right here and right now. But for now, that's the end of part 2 of What If Deku Had a Spirit Quirk. And if you enjoyed, please show some love, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And yeah, I really don't have that much else to say. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.